Okay, hello and welcome to today's session in the MSDynamicsWorld.com Spring 2015 BI and Reporting webcast series. I'm Jason Gumpert, and joining us for today's event is Noah Mosley of MSX Group. Noah was with us yesterday talking about Management Reporter, and it was a great session as always. For those of you who don't know Noah, he's a veteran financial reporting consultant for Microsoft Dynamics ERP. He focuses on Microsoft Forecaster, Management Reporter, and FRX. He has run quite a few sessions in the last few years about Forecaster with us, and it's always great to have him back. It always generates a ton of interest. I also want to recognize our site sponsors for the BI and Reporting webcast series. They are De Facto, Jet Reports, and Solver. So as we get started, please know that you can add your feedback and ask questions using the Q&A block or the chat that you should see on the right side of the webcast session here. So without further delay, please allow me to welcome Noah Mosley. Noah, let me take you off mute.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate the introduction. Glad to be with everyone today. Let me switch over to my slide deck for us. Just a few slides to get us rolling here before I get into Forecaster itself. We're talking about budgeting today for Microsoft Dynamics. My name is Noah Mosley, and a little bit about my company. I'm with the MSX Group. We are a consulting practice, and we specialize in really just 3 products for Dynamics. That would be Management Reporter, Forecaster, and FRX. So we focus on financial reporting and budgeting for the Dynamics suites. We handle consulting services for these products. We teach training classes, webinars like this, or longer class schedules, as well as software support. So if you need assistance with these products after today's webinar, feel free to email me at noah.mosley@msxgroup.com. And to get us all on the same page with Forecaster, I want to make sure that everyone understands what Forecaster does for us. Forecaster is Microsoft's application for Dynamics ERP, AX, GP, NAV, and SL. Works fine with all 4 of those. We use Forecaster for budgeting, forecasting, and planning. Everything for Forecaster is stored in a separate SQL database from your GL database, so it is outside of the GL database. And although it looks like Excel for a lot of the input screens, it is a standalone application. It's not based on Excel there. And if you are thinking about the upcoming budget cycle for your company, it's probably like you've outgrown Excel. You might have been budgeting in Excel for years, but you've just grown out what Excel can handle for you. A couple of the challenges that budget managers and budget administrators typically have to overcome for Excel would be that when you're the administrator, you're getting ready to do your budget, you're setting up tons of Excel templates. You get those ready, and then you email those out to a bunch of different budget managers. You wait for them to do their budget cycle and put all the data together, and you wait for those files to be emailed back to you. It could be a long process, not very well orchestrated, especially if you have a ton of budget managers participating in the process. And once you, as the budget administrator, get those files back, then you have to work on consolidating all that data into a consolidated budget, getting everything together. And it's not always really easy to compare those consolidated budget numbers to your actuals. So it's a drawn-out process usually. And if you get halfway through the budget process and you find out that you've got to change an Excel template or something, that could be a whole different process to work through in the process. Forecaster helps you get around all these areas here with built-in templates and processes that help solve these things for us. Forecast has spreadsheet-style user interface, so your budget managers who have been budgeting in Excel probably for years are used to the input style with rows and columns. Security and workflows all built into Forecaster, so every user logs into Forecaster with their own unique user ID and password. Workflow keeps track of everybody's budget process. It lets you know who is still working on their budgets, which budget managers have completed their budgets, and which budgets have been approved or rejected. So all that's built into Forecaster, so you as a budget administrator can easily see everybody's status even on one page. There's instant consolidation for reporting inside Forecaster. As soon as your budget managers click the Save button on their input screens, that gets stored in the same SQL database that everybody shares, and all of the reports are consolidated right away. You don't have to worry about getting Excel files and consolidating those balances and then adding them all into a single Excel file. As soon as they click Save on their input screens, those balances are ready for reporting inside Forecaster. There are detailed budgeting pages inside Forecaster that handle capital, revenue, and HR. So your budget managers can pull up the capital input screen, budget for new assets. Forecaster calculates the depreciation expense and books that to the budget expense accounts for us. Your revenue detail pages can be set up to handle breaking down how you want to calculate revenue for all your budget managers and the different cost centers. Very flexible about what accounts to include and what calculations for revenue detail. Same thing with human resource calculations. You can import all of your existing employees into Forecaster to give your budget managers a starting point for budgeting. They can pull those pages up for their cost center, make changes to the details for individual employees, and save that back into the budget. And for accessing Forecaster, there's two ways for your budget managers to access Forecaster. There is a desktop version of Forecaster, which is what I'll show us today. And there's also a web access option. So if they just need to handle input, workflow, and reporting inside Forecaster, web access works very well for them. And when you pull up the web access pages for Forecaster, they are pretty much identical to the desktop installation of Forecaster. Speaking of the components of Forecaster, we mentioned the desktop application just now and web access. There's also an Excel add-in. So if you do have budget or balances inside Excel or some templates inside Excel that you have not incorporated into Forecaster, you can still use the Excel add-in and save those balances from Excel back into the Forecaster database. And Excel can also pull the balances from the Forecaster database into Excel. So that works real well between the two applications. Everything in Forecaster gets stored in a SQL database, and everybody shares that SQL database. There's also security on all that data in that secure database. So every user that logs into Forecaster, you will limit what cost centers they have access to, what reports they can access, what input screens they can access, and all that is controlled inside Forecaster itself. And to show you the bells and whistles inside Forecaster, if you're thinking about doing this for your budget cycle, let me switch over to the application itself for us. Okay, so I have on my screen an input screen for Forecaster. Just want to get us started right where your budget managers will spend the majority of their time during the budget process. A little bit about this screen here. Spreadsheet style layout. The columns are the individual months for the new budget cycle. We got January through December, and then annual total on the right. Although when you set these up as a budget administrator, these can be monthly columns, they can be quarterly columns, you can have actuals right beside budget, calculated columns, variance columns. You set up this input screen however you need it for your budget managers. Same thing applies to the column, the rows down the left-hand side of the screen here. These are typically your account numbers, and these would match the account numbers that you're using in your GL database. So we copy that from your GL database chart of accounts, and we use that for your budgeting process inside Forecaster. It might be if you've got a lot of dimensions or segments inside your GL database, you may not care about budgeting for all those inside Forecaster. That's fine. We would only copy the dimension IDs that we care about budgeting for. When you set up this page as a budget administrator, you decide what accounts are displayed on this input screen. You decide what calculation are applied for every row or column or individual cells. And you as the budget administrator control all the colors, the fonts, the spacing, and everything else here. You set this up completely customizable. This page here, all the balances are stored to a particular cost center or department. I can see that at the very top of the page here. This is New York Manufacturing. So the budget manager would have opened this up, type in the balances, save it. If they are responsible for more than one department or cost center, they just click the open folder, type in or look up the next department they need to budget for, and switch over. It could be the same layout, same charts of accounts, same calculations, or completely different. You set this up however you need to between the different departments or cost centers. Let me switch back to that first one for us. Now this is the main input screen for your budget managers. If they're going to handle input, they'll have this page. There's also 4 other tabs I'll talk about in just a little bit. Single row input, human resources, capital, and revenue. Those are optional, but they are pretty easy to set up inside Forecaster. If your budget managers should not have access to those tabs, they won't even see those tabs available. For the Multirow, this main input screen, they can come in here, type in the balances for their budgets. If I go down to other benefits, your budget managers can type in balances as they need to. They can do individual monthly balances. They could type in annual balances and have that spread back across the months. They can type in formulas just like they would in Excel, equal, say, 5 times 5. Have that calculate for them as they do the budget input for this screen. There's different shortcut options they can do as well. And if they do not like having those balances spread evenly back across the months, spread methods are available inside Forecaster. I can click the icon at the top here for spread methods. Forecaster lets me take that annual amount, that $12,000, and spread it back evenly. Or I can spread it back based on the baseline, and the baseline might be last year's actuals or last year's budget or anything else. They could also spread that balance for the annual amount based on the value of some other account, like maybe revenue. Or you can set up other spread methods for your users, like working days, 445, any of those combinations there. Click OK, and Forecaster takes that annual amount and divides it back across the months. So easy to set up spread methods that your budget managers can use as they're doing the budget input. As I scroll down a little bit, another option for your budget managers, looking at this travel account, they can type in balances on this account directly. But if they want to add details so that you will be aware of where that travel will take place and what's it for, they can always add line item details to any account here that's available for input. And they do not have to call you for that. They can do it themselves, and it doesn't mess up their input screens. They'll just double-click that row for travel. That opens it up. There's no additional rows yet, but they can click the plus icon to add more rows here for detail, and they can add as many rows as they need to. I'll just add 2 extra rows here for us. Forecaster goes ahead and inserts a default description, line item 1 and line item 2. They can change this as a budget manager. I'll just say a trip to Atlanta for training, and a trip to New York for a conference. And the dollar amounts in the month that those would be incurred. So easy to add detail. And Forecaster tracks the dollar difference between what the account row at the top here originally was and what they've entered. And when I double-click the travel account row, it resummarizes all that data and puts the balances back on that row. It also adds a plus icon on the left-hand margin so that anybody that has this page can see that there are rows that add up to that travel row. To see the details, they just double-click, open it back up. So a great way for budget managers to add that detail without having to call you and say, hey, I need some extra rows in this Excel template. They can do it right here in Forecaster themselves. Another way for your budget manager to add details for you and everybody else to be aware about what they're thinking for these balances will be adding notes or memos to these rows. I can see the training row's got an exclamation mark on the left-hand margin, and that lets me know there has been a note added to that row. And to see that, I'll just have my cursor anywhere on that row and click the memo icon at the top. That opens up a little pop-up window for us with the text that was added by the budget manager. So adding comments is fine for any row here. You can add comments to the account rows, to line item detail rows, as well as the other pages we're about to look at for HR, capital, revenue, and such. I'll click OK there. Close that window. We talked about spread methods, line item details, memos here for us. You as a budget administrator, when you set these pages up, you also can set up all the calculations for these pages. And if I go down to our postage row, there's an equal sign on the left-hand margin. So the budget administrator has set up a formula for this row, so the budget managers cannot type over these rows. And at the bottom left, I see the formula there. That's the formula set up by the budget administrator. It can't be changed by the budget managers. It always runs, it's just $25 every month times the full-time equivalents for that month. And you can set up as many formulas as you need for all of these departments inside Forecaster. So this is the main input screen for your budget managers. They will at least have this page when they do their budget input. I want to look at the other 4 tabs for us. And we'll look at single row first here. And I think I'll look at it for, let's try production supplies. So it's a little bit different layout here for us. This is for one account at a time. There's a drop-down list where you can select what account you want to budget for. Your baseline is the left-hand column here. Your months are now going down the left-hand side of the page, and year-to-date at the bottom. You have an input column for the new budget numbers, so you can change these here directly on this page. It also tracks, for any changes here, the dollar amount of the change and the percentage change. And you can budget by any of these. Click on that header to open this up for input. You can also open up the bottom row for the annual amounts. And if you want everything to go up by 10% off of the baseline, just type in 10 there. And everything is a little bit off there, sorry. To track the dollar amounts change, same thing for the percent changes. So a great way for your budget managers to see a quick comparison against the baseline budgets for us, tracking the dollar amounts and the percent changes. It is only one account at a time, but it does give you that quick comparison against the baseline. Single row input is optional. You do not have to make this available for your budget managers, but it's a nifty way to have that quick comparison. Human resources for Forecaster is built in and available as well. It is an optional tab, just like single row was, but it does come in very handy for budgeting all of your wages, taxes, and benefits for all of your existing employees and any new hires for next year. We've got a separate row for every individual employee here. You can import these pretty easy from any of your payroll systems into Forecaster. And you typically do this right before you start your budget cycle. Your budget manager will come to this page. They can make changes to any of the details for any of these existing employees for next year or add new hires as well. If they know that some of these employees may not be working all of next year, then can come in here to Forecaster and change the ending period of when they know that that person will be leaving the company. Are they working full-time? We can do salaried people or hourly people. Pay rates are either annual amounts or hourly wages. And Forecaster lets you track 2 pay changes per year for each employee. as well as bonus amounts, and bonus amounts could be fixed dollar amounts or as a percentage of their wages. There's other accounts to track for all these employees that help your benefit calculations. You may have different state tax rates. So each employee could be assigned to different state codes. You can have different codes for medical coverage and such to have different rate calculations for the benefits. All these details here help calculate all the dollar amounts for the budget, and that can go back and flow up and show up on the multi-row input screen. The next detail page we'll look at is capital for us. So your budget managers, if they have access to the capital page, they'll see this tab at the top for capital. They'll click that. Every row here will be a new asset that they plan to purchase for the next year. You can let them add as many new assets as you need to. You set this up for them as far as what capital types they can budget for. And we only have 4 capital types listed here, but you can have as many capital types added here as you need to for your company. Your budget managers add the new rows, type in the description for the new assets. They tell Forecaster what period they plan to purchase the asset and what period to start depreciation expense for that asset, the dollar amount for the asset, and how many they plan to purchase. Forecaster takes this information, calculates depreciation expense, books that for the budget, and the cost amount to the budget as well. Again, this page is optional, but it gives your budget managers a great way to track new asset additions for next year.
Hey, Noah, there's a couple questions that have come in.
Good deal, Jason. Thank you. Okay.
All right. So any limitations on adding additional columns on this input set? This was when you were, I think, actually on the single row.
Yep,
so on this input set to display last year actual or budget columns. Seems like single row view looks odd when columns are added and column calculations are difficult.
No. Okay, so adding columns for this main input screen here. Yep, we do have just January through December and the annual column on the right, but you can add as many columns here as you need to. If you need actuals right beside budget, that's fine too. We set all that up in before the budget process starts, and the budget administrator controls any layout here for the screen. As many columns as they need, as many rows as they need, any layout that you need for your budget cycle. So it's not a predetermined template. You control what every column represents and how many. And Jason, you had something about the single row you said?
Oh, no, that was part of the question. There was a comment at the end. Seems like single row view looks odd when columns are added and column calculations are difficult. Single row,
as long as your column definition for the multi-row input screen matches your baseline columns, they should match up fine. It does flip it, so you have the months going down the left-hand side, so that is a little bit odd, but that's how there's no controlling how that shows up on this page here. But yes, your column definition for your baseline and your column definition for your multi-row have to match.
All right, question on the on HR. Are the various parameters of HR for HR budget customizable? Can more HR cost components be added to templates? So
the number of columns here, this is you can add only 10 columns on the right for additional fields, additional columns. These additional columns on the right help you track different benefit rates. And when I look at how we set up the benefit calculations for Forecaster, the benefit page has, I have only a few rows here, but you can add as many rows here as you need to. Every row is a different benefit calculation. It might be taxes, might be insurance, 401k amounts. So you can add as many here as you need to. And all of these are driven off of rates, or they can be fixed amounts per month.
For time periods, are rolling forecasts like 12-month rolling accommodated?
So for Multirow, if you want 12-month rolling, it's easy to start your budget cycle, and then when you get ready to change that, go to the column definition and switch out what periods are referenced. And just to show you the column definitions here, don't pay attention to my codes on the left, they don't match up, but the labels, I can have as many rows here as you need to. If I need to switch this from January to, if I need to add a new period here to the column definition, that's easy done. Just a matter of right-clicking, inserting from segments, picking what period is going to be assigned to this new input screen. And all your periods are listed. There's typically A's for budgets and the year references. Just pick the next month coming up, and that will refresh everybody's input screen for the new month.
All right, where would you put a capital purchase budget in GP?
So to get the budget from the capital input screen back into GP, you would not import all these individual assets. It would only be importing the account balances back into GP. All this would be stored just in Forecaster.
All right, and one follow-up to the rolling forecast question. As an example, we do forecast every week, so 52 weekly forecasts. I don't know if
that is quite a few. So with weekly, I don't know if I've set up a weekly reforecast. Be glad to talk with you about that afterwards if you need to. Just send me an email, and I'd be glad to look at it with you.
All right, that's all the questions for now.
Good deal. Thank you, Jason. So we looked at the main input screen, multi-row. We looked at single row, human resources, and capital here. Revenue was another input screen. It's optional, but it does come in handy for breaking down the detail for your revenue. And even though it says revenue, you could use it for anything else, cost or any other expenses. What it gives for us is that we're still in the same department, New York Manufacturing. You can add 2 extra dimensions that may not be tracked with your existing chart of accounts. We're using markets and customers for this example. Although you could change that terminology, it could represent anything else. Depending on what customer you have determines what calculations and accounts are displayed on the screen here. And you as the budget administrator, you decide what accounts are displayed, you decide what calculations are included here. You can have as few rows here as you need to or as many. It is limited to the same columns that you have on the multi-row page. So the columns have to match the multi-row page. Your budget managers come in here, type in their balances according to how you have these set up, and recalculate the revenue for all of these pages here. They handle that for all the different customers or products or however you want to call this. They do this one. They make any changes also to different customers. We have motors set up differently than we have spare parts set up. Motors is driven by calculations that the budget administrator has set up. Spare parts is driven by a rate times a number of units. So it's a little bit different layout. Let me switch over to that for us. Kind of a split screen. The top half of the screen are the units that the budget manager will input, and that will drive the calculations on the bottom half of the screen. And we have the rate section, and we have the accounts where the dollar amounts are stored. Your budget manager just updates the units for the top half of the screen, and it drives the calculations in the bottom. So 2 different ways of breaking down the revenue tab for us. Either you set up a custom page where you decide all of the different rows that are populated and the calculations, or you can use this rate times units calculation page. And everything you have here for input, same as capital, HR, and single row. All these calculations and balances flow back into Multirow for the same department. And we're still in New York manufacturing. I can see at the top of the page here. And revenue is optional, but it's an easy way to break down these details for us. Now, these are the only tabs you have available for your budget managers to do input. You could have different input screens available for your budget managers as well. If I go to Data Input, pulls up a pop-up window. There's an input set drop-down list. I'm working with the Budget 2016 input screens, input sets. But you could have a different one set up for them as well, and it could have a whole entirely different layout of columns, entirely different layout of calculations and accounts for a completely different purpose, but for that same budget manager in that same department. In this list, I've got all my different budgets set up. I've got forecast input screen set up. I've got a page to control if we're budgeting by theaters or if we have what-if scenarios. So you can set these up. Your budget managers will only see the ones you give them access to. So you do control access to what input sets they have access to completely. So for data input for your budget managers, pretty straightforward, easy for them to navigate, a lot of flexibility about what they can access as far as can they get to payroll details, can they get to capital, can they even see the revenue details well. And again, security is built and set up inside Forecaster, so they can only budget for their assigned centers or cost centers or departments. You set all that up before the budget cycle starts. Now, once they are finished and they click the Save icon, all of these balances and details are stored in the Forecaster SQL database. Any other budget manager or administrator can see that data inside Forecaster. The point also is that your budget manager may not be finished making changes. They may intend to come back tomorrow and make some more changes. But at some point, they will want to say, I am completely done, I'm finished with it, and they need to let you know as an administrator that they're finished. Forecaster has workflow built in, so that handles that process for us. Once they click Save and they're finished with this page, your budget manager goes to the icon for workflow. And I can see my department 1110 is set up as in progress because I've been working on it. I haven't finished it or submitted it yet. If I am done with that as a budget manager, I'll just go here to the new status, change that from in progress to submitted. And when I save that change, it'll lock the input screen from changes. And it can also send an email to the next person in the review process, letting them know it's ready for review. And that next person can check the balances, and then they can either approve it or reject those changes, those balances. If they approve it, that input set remains locked and goes to the next person in the review process. If they reject it, it unlocks it and sends an email back to the first person saying they need to make some changes. And you as a budget administrator, you can also come to this whole page. You can check the status for any different input sets, any individual departments in your budget process, and you can also check any roll-ups or summaries of all these cost centers. I'll look at Eastern for all my different departments in the Eastern region. You'll see each row here for all the different departments and everybody's status. So a great way for a budget administrator to come to one page and check everybody's progress at one time. You don't have to wait for emails to get stuff back. Right away, you'll have their status. Jason, any questions coming about workflow or revenue or anything else?
No other questions right now. There was one clarification on that weekly forecasting item from before. The forecasts were monthly, but they were updated each week, but nothing else right now.
Okay, good deal. Thank you, sir. So workflow is a great way to keep track of the budget process inside Forecaster. I mentioned consolidations. As soon as your budget manager clicks that save icon, everything's in Forecaster, and it is also consolidated right away, so the reports in Forecaster are ready as soon as they click that save button. And to look at the reports in Forecaster, I'll go to this selection menu for us. And I've got an option for the reports in a menu. And you can set up as many different reports as you need to for your budget managers and for yourself. You can control all the access, security access for these reports, the layouts, and the data included. Let me go down here to the budgeted income statement. And you can run this for any individual regions. You can run it actually for any individual departments or for the whole company at one time as well. This is just a quick report here comparing our annual budget that we've been working on against our year-to-date actuals with a dollar variance between all those. Summary income statement from net sales down through operating profits. Any report that you make available for yourself or your budget managers, if you run it for a summary level, like I just ran this for the entire company, you can still drill down to the details. So if I want to see where all these sales are coming from, I'll double-click on that sales row, and I can drill down. I see that Eastern, Midwest, and the Western sales are detailed in their dollar amounts. And you can continue to double-click and drill down to the lowest level, which might be the individual departments or cost centers, as well it might be multiple accounts that add up to this sales row. Every time you double-click, Forecaster opens up a new screen on top of the last one. So if I look at window, they're all still listed. I can jump back to any of these individual reports. If I want to go back one page, I'll just click the lower X on the top right-hand corner. That closes this window and shows me the one right behind it. And when you set these reports up as a budget administrator, you control the fonts, the colors, the spacing, the text, all that you set up when you define the reports inside Forecaster. And this report is very summarized with just 3 columns of balances, but you can have as many columns here as you need to, representing actuals, budget, forecast, any calculation columns, and the same thing is true for any rows here. You can have as many rows or as few as you need. These rows can represent accounts, summary of accounts, you can represent departments, periods. You have a complete control about what every row and every column represents. And if your budget manager opens these reports, they will only have access to the departments that you have given them access to see. And if they do not have access to see payroll data or capital details or revenue detail, you can restrict them from being able to drill down to those levels as well. Close out of that one. And I think I'll pull up another report here for us. Employee detail. I'll pull this up. So if I open this up for the Eastern Division, this report gives me a quick display of all the individual employees in the Eastern region. And it shows me the dollar amounts that were calculated by the HR detail tab as far as the salary for the year, any pay increases, the new salary amounts, all the details that would have come from the different individual input screens for HR. So a great way for your budget managers or for you, budget administrator, to see all this on one page for roll-ups of different departments, regions or states or anything else that summarizes a group of departments. And when you build the reports inside Forecaster, you can have reports detailing the HR pages, detailing the capital and revenue, line item details. You can add the memos that your budget manager added to your reports, have those print if you need to print those out as well. And again, as soon as your budget manager clicks the save icon on the input screens, those reports are consolidated and ready to run. So you don't have to wait for anybody to send you files to do a consolidation. So there are other bells and whistles inside Forecaster. I want to mention those for you as well. Allocations are easily done inside Forecaster. If you need to take a lump sum dollar amount and allocate it across different departments, that is easily done using Forecaster's allocation worksheet. I've set up 4 here. Let me just look at these in the worksheet view. Every row here is a different allocation definition. You can set up as many allocations that you need to, and you can run these at any point in the budget cycle and as often as you need to. Forecaster takes a lump sum dollar amount that you book to a source department and account, and we'll distribute that to a group of departments, to a group of accounts based on a fixed percentage, or they can based on the value of some other account. You might want to distribute rent to a lot of different locations based on square footage. So easily done inside Forecaster. Set these definitions up with all the accounts and department references and run that whenever you get ready to in the budget process. In addition to allocations, if you are budgeting using multi-currency, that's handled fine as well. Your budget managers would have an input screen for their local currency, and you would set this up so that as soon as they click Save on their local currency pages, Forecaster records the conversion rates, and it automatically stores it in the local currency as well as the converted currency. So you can set that up all inside Forecaster and handle as many different currency codes as you need to. Inside Forecaster is also an adjustment wizard. So if you as a budget administrator, you decide, well, the budget cycle is finished, but what if I need to adjust a certain group of accounts up or down by a percentage or by a dollar amount? I can come in here to Forecaster's adjustment wizard. It's just a one-page wizard. I'll select what department and account I need to adjust, and you can do individual departments and accounts or summaries of departments and accounts. And you can adjust by amounts or by percentages inside Forecaster. Okay. And also select what periods you plan to affect. It might be that I only care about changing the balances for August, September, and October for the budget. Easy way to do quick adjustments inside Forecaster using this one pop-up box and affect individual departments and accounts or roll-ups or summaries of different departments and accounts. Jason, how are we doing on time and questions there?
We do have a couple more questions that have come in. Once a budget has been completed and saved by the budget administrator, can it then be reopened later in the year for changes?
Sure. So if you've gone through a budget cycle and workflow and you've locked down a budget input screen, you can always go back in and unlock that and make changes. And you might want to keep the original one and make a new copy. That's easy done as well. So I have under Tools and Wizards an option for Copy Plan Wizard. And using this wizard, you can copy all of the setup and the account balances, line item details, and HR details and everything else if you wanted to from one budget year, let's just say from budget 2006 to the forecast 2006. And you can use this wizard and copy all the setup and all the details, the data for that from the original budget to the new forecast, and then use that new one for input. So either way is fine. Either unlock the original budget and make changes there, or use this wizard to copy to a new set of input screens and make changes to the new one.
All right. Can you print memos or notes on reports with a word wrap feature?
So there's not a word wrap feature for memos, and memos are limited to 255 characters. So the only option is just to widen that column width. You could copy it out to Excel and do the word wrap there, though.
If a period is marked as historical, can you go back and change back to posting?
You can. So in Forecaster's list of periods, which is under Setup and Segments, this is a list of all of your, typically it shows a list of all your available months for your actuals and months for your budget and forecast periods. If you come in here and you make these H's for historical, that locks that period from input and you can't change the balances anymore. You can always come right back to this page, change it from historical to posting, and then make changes to those period balances. So that's fine. At any point you can change those back and forth.
All right, I believe that is all the questions in the queue.
All right, good deal. So we looked at the input screens of Forecaster. We talked about the reports inside Forecaster, the adjustment wizard, the allocations, Forecaster, MultiCurrency as well. A lot of bells and whistles to get you through your budget process. Typically, if you're going to set up Forecaster, you can get a quick start up and running within a week. If you need very detailed templates, they may spill over past a week there, but a quick start gets you up and running in a week's time there. Installation is very straightforward, easy there. You do have to have a SQL database, so that goes on a server. And then your budget managers can either use the desktop installation of Forecaster or the web access. There's also other options for getting data inside Forecaster other than the input screens. So you use a budget administrator. You could also use journal entries from Forecaster or transaction batches, just quick ways of getting balances into accounts inside Forecaster for multiple departments. Two quick ways there. You can also import data, tools and import. Forecaster lets you import account balances, your HR details, your details for capital if you want to import capital details, revenue details, and pull all that from a tab-delimited text file into Forecaster. So it's easy to get that data ready in like an Excel spreadsheet, save it as a tab-delimited text file, and go to Tools, Import here to import the data. And typically that's how we bring in the actuals inside Forecaster. And it's easy to bring in the actuals into Forecaster because we pull the actuals out of your GL system with the account numbers from your GL, which will be the same account numbers we set up inside Forecaster for budgeting. And looking at the chart of accounts inside Forecaster, that's going to be under Setup and Segments. And typically we'll set up a department segment and an account segment. The account is usually just your main account number from your GL. And this will be just a list here of all your GL account numbers that we copied from your GL. Their descriptions, what type of account it is. These all have letter codes to help us to determine if they're typically a credit or debit account balance. And if you're going to store a balance to an account in Forecaster, it's got to be listed here. So it's recognized as a valid account. Same kind of spreadsheet layout for your other segments. Back under Setup, Segments, and Departments. This would be your other dimension codes from your GL database. And you could have these on separate worksheets. So if you have department and division, you can have those listed on separate worksheets. Typically, though, to make it easier for your budget managers, I'll combine any extra dimensions onto this one worksheet. So this 11-010 for New York manufacturing, 11 might be for New York, and the 10 might be for manufacturing. Two different dimensions just combined together in one field inside Forecaster. That way when your budget managers go to input, they only have one selection to pick their dimension combinations. If you break these out separately, one for department, one for division, you'd have two selection boxes here. So if you can combine those, makes it easier for your budget manager. Plus, you can only set security on accounts and one segment, one dimension here. So that is something to consider if you need to set security on those other dimensions. If you do want to break out your dimensions into separate segments, like department, account, division, you can have up to 10 here listed. So I want to mention a few points, Jason, before we take the last round of questions for Forecaster. Let me jump back to PowerPoint slide deck for a minute. Just want to mention that if you do need assistance with Forecaster after today's webinar, we've got information on our website at msxgroup.com. We have a forums and message section on there if you want to look up quick questions there. We offer training classes for Forecaster, as well as webinars and consulting services. Email is the best way to get in touch with me after today's session, noah.mosley@msxgroup.com. And twice a year now, we offer a whole day of training for Forecaster for free. We just finished up this past spring for April. It was middle of this past April. We're tentatively looking at April 21st for next year, and we've got those on our website. FFMR 2016 is a page. To look that up if you want to get registered to join us for that next year. We'll probably also do one in November. And Jason, what we can do is I'll just leave this up, but I'll take any additional questions that have come in. See, we've got some out there in the chat box.
Yeah, so a few more have come in here. The first one, how do you load a budget from Forecaster to GP project accounting?
So you do have to export the data from Forecaster. Let me jump back over there for us. So I've got Forecaster back on my screen. So there's no direct link from within Forecaster to GP. So you do have to go to Tools and Export to pull the posting level data out of Forecaster into a tab delimited text file. And you just tell Forecaster what budget you're going to pull out into that text file and some other information here. That pulls all of the account numbers and the balances out to that export file. Then you do have to do some manipulation to make it match the template that GP needs to import. So the column layout is a little bit different than what GP needs, not too much. And usually if you have certain dimensions combined in Forecaster, you have to break those up in the export file before you import into GP.
All right. Next question, do you recommend purging or deleting old budgets? And if so, what is the recommended method?
Right, so if you do maintain history inside Forecaster, it can build up and slow down the SQL database and the application itself. So if you no longer need that budget data or actuals that you brought up in prior years in the Forecaster, I would recommend go ahead and deleting those. On our message board, we've got steps outlined for deleting those that data, as far as going through and deleting workflow or history first, and then deleting the periods from the period worksheet, and then some other deletion, like you might delete the input sets, you might delete old reports, just some cleanup that you can go through. So there's that checklist on our message board on msxgroup.com.
All right.
And Jason, I can send out an email after today's session with links to that stuff as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. On the HR tab, if an employee works for multiple departments, would they appear in each department, or can the allocation feature be used to split their salary and benefits?
It'd be both. So I'm looking at human resources on my screen for New York manufacturing. I've got one person here that might be working 25% of their time in this department and the rest in another department. So that person would show up on this page and the HR tab for the other department as well. So you can handle it that way, But there's also that human master, HR master page. Close out some windows here. Under data and human resource master, I'll make sure I'm in the right budget year, budget 2016. You can find that person that is going to be allocated between multiple departments. Double click, and this one is allocated 75% of the time to this department 95080 and 25% to this other department. And you can take that and add as many different departments to this list as you need to for this person. If you add a third one here, and then I go back to data input to the HR input tab, they'd automatically show up in that third one as well.
All right. How can you do cross-departmental project budgeting? For example, a new product project that uses resources from multiple R&D departments as well as marketing and sales departments.
So it might be what you're talking about is going to data input, and instead of just budgeting for one account, you have all segments. And let me see if I can pick a group of departments. I'll say all of Eastern, and I'll say account number training, or you can do a group of accounts as well. And that way on one page here, this one budget manager can budget for account 2020, which is for training, for all these different departments, all on one page.
All right. I think we have one final question here, so I'll make a final call for any remaining questions that you might have.
Okay.
And here we go. So is there a limitation on how many versions of budget and forecast can be stored? Can these be restricted by version for access?
So you can have, it's in a SQL database, so it depends on the memory and storage room on that SQL database. But you can have as many versions of the budget there as you need to. Keep in mind, though, that the more versions you have in that SQL database, the slower you might see, like when a budget manager clicks the Save button to save an input screen. It might take a little bit longer the more versions that you keep. But you can have as many as you need to inside Forecaster. And you can have as many years of actuals as you need inside Forecaster, as many forecast versions, as many budget versions. So no particular limits there other than watch out for the SQL database size and storage.
All right, well, that's the end of our question queue. I want to remind folks, we do have a quick survey that will pop up after the session. We really appreciate you taking 15 or 20 seconds to fill that out. But that wraps up today's event. So, Noah, thanks so much for joining us again today. It was a lot of fun and a lot of great questions.
Thanks, Jason. I'm glad to be here. Glad everybody could join us.
Yeah, thanks to everyone in the audience, too. We're glad to have you once again. Be on the lookout for a recording. We'll be posting that quite soon and sending an update out. So with that, we will wrap up the session. Have a great day.